The detection area is probably the most used mob there is. In order for the detection area to work properly, you must have the following tags included in the tag manager: player, friendly, enemy, and ball. If you click on the tag manager drop-down list at the top of the inspector, you should see all 4 of those tags. If not, then you'll need to add them by clicking the Add Tag option at the bottom of the list. Let's go through the user prefs. If you hover your cursor over the words "Hover Me," you'll see some important information, so be sure to check that out. Is on determines whether or not the detection area is operational when the game starts. Is barrier allows you to turn the detection area into an invisible barrier, kind of like an invisible force field. Detect triggers determines whether or not it can detect colliders that are set to trigger. In most cases, you want this option turned off. The next 2 sections determine which tags the detection area will detect. Detect player will allow the detection area to detect player, or rather, objects that are tagged as player. Detect friendly allows the detection area to detect objects that are tagged as friendly. Detect enemies allows the detection area to detect objects that are tagged as enemy. And detect ball allows the detection area to detect objects that have the tag ball. Other tag A, other tag B, and other tag C allow you to detect any 3 tags that exist in the tag manager. Just type the tag names you want to detect in the fields exactly as they appear in the tag manager. There are 18 events. Barrier activated happens anytime the detection area becomes an invisible barrier. Barrier deactivated happens anytime the detection area becomes passable. Turned on happens anytime the detection area is turned on. And turned off happens anytime the detection area is turned off. The rest of the events deal with specific tag detections. Player entered happens anytime a player enters the detection area, or more specifically, any game object that is tagged as player. Player exited happens anytime a player exits the detection area. Friendly entered happens anytime a friendly NPC enters the detection area. Friendly exited happens anytime a friendly exits the detection area. Enemy entered happens anytime an enemy enters the detection area. Enemy exited happens anytime an enemy exits the detection area. Ball entered happens anytime a ball enters into the detection area. And ball exited happens anytime a ball exits the detection area. The rest of the events are similar to the ones I just mentioned, but are based on what tags you have typed out in the Other Tags to Detect section, just above the Events section. How about a simple demonstration? There's so many ways that you can use the detection area that it would be impractical to go over all of them in this tutorial. Chances are you'll find ways to use it that I haven't thought of, so I'll keep it simple. Since we can't see the detection area during gameplay, I'm going to create a cube and scale it so that it looks like a floor in my scene. This will represent the detection area. Once I have the floor created and positioned away from my character, I'll drop a detection area box into my scene and make sure the box collider component is expanded. I'll also make sure the manipulator handles are set to pivot and not center. I'll move it over to my floor and scale it up so that it covers the entire floor area. I'll also make sure it's tall enough so that I can't jump over it or out of it. With the detection area covering our floor, we now have the ability to detect when a player enters the room and when they leave the room. The question now is, what do we want to happen when our player does enter the room or exits the room? Let's pretend the room is filled with some kind of toxic gas which slowly takes away our health. We'll need 2 things for that. Something to take away our health and something to regulate how fast our health is taken away. We can use the health modifier to take away our health, and we can use a repeater to regulate how fast it's taken away, or rather how often. I'll navigate to the Utilities folder and search for the health modifier. The health modifier will allow us to modify our player's health. I'll drop one into my scene. The repeater is also in the Utilities folder, just a little bit farther down from the health modifier. I'll go ahead and drop one into my scene. With the repeater selected, I'll change the repeat time to 0.5 so that we take away some health points from our player every half second. I'll go ahead and expand the repeater repeated event and drag in the health modifier. I'll tell it to damage our player and set the damage to about 1. Now I'll select the health modifier and make sure the modification method is set to percentage so that our character loses 1% of his health every half second. Next, we need to turn on the repeater when we enter the room and turn it off when we exit the room. I'll select the detection area and expand the player entered event and the player exited event. I'll drag the repeater to the player entered event and tell it to start repeating. Then, I'll drag the repeater to the player exited event and tell it to stop repeating. I think we're ready to test out our work. As you can see, our health begins ticking down when we enter the room. As long as we stay in the room, we'll continue to lose health points. However, if I leave the room, our health will stop going down. If we go back into the room and stay long enough, our character will eventually die from the toxic gas.